There's a bar on a corner in Provenza where I've watched the same scene play out more times than I can count. A guy, older, 60s, sometimes older than that, sitting at a high table, glowing. Somebody young and warm is laughing at everything he says. He's got a drink he didn't watch get poured. He thinks tonight is the best night he's had in a decade. And I'm 2 tables over, drinking a soda water, knowing there's maybe a 1 in 3 chance he wakes up tomorrow without his phone, his watch, the cash in his room safe, and a few hours of memory he'll never get back. I'm Luke. I've spent the last 7 years moving between cities in Latin America, and about 18 months of that, spread across a lot of separate stays, has been in Medellín. This is not the video where I tell you Medellín is paradise and you should book a flight. This is the video where I tell you what actually happens to men your age in this city, the good and the genuinely dangerous, so that if you come with your eyes open instead of your guard down. By the end of this, you're going to understand why the older foreign man is the single most targeted person in the Medellín nightlife economy, what the real risks are, and what the guys who do this well actually do differently. If you're considering something like this, or you just want to know what it's really like, please subscribe, because the next ones cover the same kind of ground for other cities, and I'd rather you hear it from someone who's been on the ground than from a highlight reel. Let me start with why you're even thinking about this place. Medellín has been sold to men your age harder than almost any city on earth. The pitch is relentless, and it's not entirely false, which is what makes it dangerous. Perfect weather all year. They call it the city of eternal spring, and they're right. It sits around 75 degrees basically forever. The cost of living is a fraction of what you're paying at home, and there's an entire content industry built to convince a lonely 65-year-old man that in Medellín, he is a catch again. That the years fall away. That what didn't work for him in Phoenix or Cleveland works beautifully here. Here's the honest part. A lot of men do come here and build something real. I'll get to them, because they matter and they're the whole point. But the version of Medellín that gets marketed to your demographic specifically, the nightlife fantasy, the idea that Parque Lleras is a candy store, that version has a body count, and I mean that close to literally. When you land, you'll almost certainly end up in El Poblado. It's the wealthy, green, walkable comuna, where nearly every foreigner starts. Provenza is the pretty part. Cafes, rooftop bars, the Instagram version. A furnished 1-bedroom there runs you anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 a month now, which is triple what a local pays, because the whole zone has been priced for foreigners. Parque Lleras is the nightlife core. A few blocks of bars and clubs that after dark fills up with exactly 2 groups of people. Foreign men, and locals who have organized their entire evening around foreign men. That's the setup. A concentrated few blocks, full of guys who just arrived, don't speak the language, are carrying more cash and better phones than anyone around them, and desperately want to believe the fantasy. If you were designing a hunting ground, you couldn't do better. And I want to be clear that most people you meet are not predators. The vast majority of Colombians are decent people going about their lives who have nothing to do with any of this. But the few blocks I'm describing are not a representative sample of the city. They're a filter that concentrates the risk. Let me paint the arrival for you in more detail, because the first 72 hours are when men make the decisions that determine how the whole trip goes. You land at José María Córdoba, which is up in the mountains in Rio Negro, and the drive down into the valley takes about 45 minutes, and it's genuinely stunning. You come around a bend, and the whole city is spread out below you in a bowl of green mountains, lights going up the hillsides. It does something to you. You feel like you've arrived somewhere that's been waiting for you. Hold on to that feeling, but don't let it make your decisions, because that exact feeling of destiny is what gets edited into the marketing, and it's what a lonely man mistakes for a sign. You get to your Airbnb in Provenza, and everything reinforces the fantasy. The apartment is nicer than it would be at home for the price. The barista downstairs is friendly. The weather is perfect. You walk around and you feel, maybe for the first time in years, light. And within a day or two, if you're on the apps or you go out at night, the attention starts, and it's a lot, and it's fast, and it's aimed. A 60-something man who felt invisible at home suddenly has more messages than he can answer. And the temptation, the thing that ruins men, is to conclude that the problem was always the United States. That back home, they just couldn't see you, and here they finally can. That story feels wonderful, and it's the most expensive story you can tell yourself. Here's the counterfact that keeps you safe. the attention is not evidence about you. It's evidence about the local economics. In a city where a good local monthly salary is a few $100s, a foreign man who spends $2,000 a month on rent alone is a walking financial event, and a certain slice of the population has organized itself, with real skill, around that fact. That doesn't mean everyone's a hustler. I'll keep hammering that, because the fearmongers get it as wrong as the fantasy sellers do. It means the volume and intensity of attention you get in the foreigner zones is a market signal, not a personal one. And men who can't hold that distinction in their heads are the ones I watch get hurt. Now let me tell you what actually happens, because this is the part the Passport Bro channels skip. The word you need to know is escopolamina, scopolamine. On the street they call it burundanga, and the tabloid nickname is devil's breath. It's a drug that, in the wrong dose, does something almost tailor-made for robbing tourists. It makes a person compliant and suggestible while wiping out their ability to form memories. Someone under its influence can walk to an ATM, enter their own PIN, hand over their own valuables, unlock their own apartment, and remember none of it. The U.S. Embassy in Colombia has issued specific, repeated warnings about this, and specifically about foreigners being targeted through dating apps and in nightlife venues in Medellín. This is not folklore. This is a documented pattern that has killed people, including a real and painful number of American men, over the last several years. The delivery is almost always a drink. This is why I nurse a soda water I watch the bartender open. You meet someone, the vibe is incredible. They're attentive in a way that feels like fate, and at some point, there's a drink you didn't see poured, or a moment your glass was out of your sightline. That's the whole play. The warmth isn't the reward. The warmth is the delivery mechanism. I'll give you a specific one. My second long stay here, there was a British guy in my building, retired, early 60s, genuinely lovely man, the type who'd help you carry groceries up the stairs. He'd met someone on an app. He told me over coffee, a little sheepish and a little thrilled, that she was different, that she actually liked him. I didn't have the heart to say much. 10 days later, I ran into him in the lobby and he looked gray. He'd woken up 2 mornings prior on his own bathroom floor. Phone gone, laptop gone, the roughly $2,000 he kept in the room gone, and a completely blank tape from about 9 p.m. onward. He'd let her in. He didn't remember letting her in. He didn't remember anything. And the thing that stuck with me wasn't the money, it was that he kept quietly asking me whether I thought any of it had been real. That's the part that breaks men, not the robbery. The doubt afterward about whether a single warm moment was ever what it seemed. And I want you to notice the shape of it, because the shape repeats. It's rarely a stranger in an alley. It's someone charming, met through an app or in a nice bar, over the course of an evening that felt like the best kind of luck. The niceness is not a break in the pattern. The niceness is the pattern. Real danger in this city, for men your age, almost never looks dangerous. It looks like exactly the thing you flew down here hoping for. That's the mental adjustment that's hardest for guys to make, because every instinct says threat looks like threat. Here, threat looks like romance moving very fast. I'll give you a second one, a different flavor, so you don't think it's only the drink. A retired American, call it late 50s, I met through the cafe crowd. Sharp guy, ran his own business for 30 years, not naive about people, or so he thought. He didn't get drugged. What happened to him was slower, and in some ways, he found it more humiliating. He met a woman, things moved fast. Within a couple of weeks, she'd more or less moved into his rental, and the requests started small. Help with a phone bill, a sick relative, a cousin's tuition. Each one alone was nothing to a man on a U.S. pension. He paid them all for 4 months, telling himself it was generosity, telling himself this was just how a good man behaves toward a partner in a poorer country. When he finally added it up, it was several $1,000s, and the day he raised it, gently, she was gone by evening, and so were a few things from the apartment. His words to me were, I knew better. I did every single thing I'd have told a friend not to do. That's the trap. It isn't stupidity. Smart, accomplished men walk straight into it. Because the thing being exploited isn't your intelligence, it's your loneliness. And loneliness makes fools of everyone eventually. That's the sharp end. There's a duller, more common version too, and it doesn't involve any drug at all. It just involves the same fantasy running slower. This is the version I know from the inside, and it's the one I'm least proud of. My first real stretch in Medellín, years ago before I knew anything, I got into a relationship with a woman I'll call Catalina. 7 months. And for a long time I told myself it was love, and some of it might even have been. But the shape of it was this. The expenses were always mine. The emergencies were always real sounding and always expensive. The family always needed something, and every time I hesitated, I was made to feel like a cheap foreigner who didn't understand how things worked here. By the time it ended, I'd spent a genuinely stupid amount of money, and the lesson wasn't, Colombian women are like this. That's a garbage generalization and I won't make it. The lesson was that I had walked in wanting so badly to be chosen that I made myself the easiest mark in the room. The vulnerability was mine. I brought it with me from the airport. And a man in his 60s, recently divorced or widowed, lonely in a way he can't always admit, he is carrying even more of that vulnerability than 30-year-old me was. Predators, romantic and criminal, read that hunger like a neon sign. Here's a mid-video ask, because I actually want to know. How many of you watching this are seriously thinking about doing something like this? Coming to Medellín, or somewhere like it, for a fresh start? Drop the city you've got in mind in the comments. I read all of them, and it genuinely shapes what I cover next. Let me talk about what men get wrong, because the mistakes are predictable and they're all downstream of one core error. The core error is believing the economics are invisible. A man arrives, he's treated with warmth and attention he hasn't felt in years, and he concludes that he, personally, is the reason, that his charm crossed a border and got its confidence back. What he's not letting himself see is that he represents, to a certain slice of people, a walking financial opportunity, and that the attention is priced accordingly. Not from everyone. I keep saying that because it's true and it matters, but the men who get hurt are almost always the ones who couldn't tell the difference because they didn't want to. The second mistake is treating a few blocks of poblado nightlife as if it's Medellín. It isn't. It's a foreigner processing zone. Real life in this city happens in Laureles, in Envigado, in Sabaneta, in 100 neighborhoods where people are just living, and the dynamics there are completely different. Because you're not walking into a room that was pre-sorted to separate you from your money. Guys who never leave the Lares bubble think they've seen Medellín. They've seen the airport gift shop. The third mistake, and this one's gotten a lot of men in real legal trouble lately, is not understanding that the city has turned hard against the whole sex tourism ecosystem. This is not the Medellín of a decade ago, and men working off decade-old assumptions get burned. The city government has run aggressive public campaigns against sexual exploitation, and especially, and rightly, and with zero tolerance, against anything involving minors, which is treated as one of the most serious crimes there is, and which has ensnared foreign men who claim they didn't know someone's real age, a claim that protects no one. Enforcement has been serious and visible. Raids, hotels barred from renting to certain guests, foreigners detained and deported, and stretches where whole zones around Parque Lleras were placed under nighttime restrictions, specifically because of this. The era where a foreign man could assume the nightlife here was a consequence-free playground is over, and it's not coming back. And pretending otherwise is how men end up in a Colombian legal situation they are in no way equipped to handle, in a system that is not built to be gentle with them. I'm not going to walk you through any of that territory, because there's nothing I could tell you about it that wouldn't amount to helping with something I want no part of. I'm telling you it exists, plainly, so you understand the ground has genuinely shifted under the old fantasy, and so you don't wander into a catastrophe thinking the rules are what some 5-year-old video told you. And the fourth mistake is going invisible. Guys come here and don't tell anyone back home the details. Where they're staying, who they're seeing, what their plans are. Partly out of a vague embarrassment about the whole enterprise. That embarrassment is exactly what a criminal is counting on. The man nobody's checking on is the safest man in the world to rob. So let me tell you what it actually takes, because I promised you the men who do this well, and they're real, and their version of Medellín is genuinely good. The men who thrive here have almost nothing in common with the nightlife fantasy. A lot of them came for concrete, unromantic reasons, and the life grew from there. Medellín is a serious medical and dental tourism hub. Men your age come for procedures that would cost 5 times as much at home, done in genuinely excellent private clinics with English-speaking staff, and end up staying because the weather is kind to old joints and the cost of living means their retirement actually stretches. I've met guys who came down for dental implants or a knee, and left 3 weeks later already looking at long-stay apartments, not because of any woman, but because they felt physically better than they had in years, and their money suddenly went 4 times as far. That's a real reason. That's a foundation you can build on, and nothing built on it can be taken from you in a single blank tape night. The ones who build a real life do a few specific things, and I've watched enough of them now to know the pattern cold. They get out of Poblado, at least to live. They rent in Lorias, which is walkable and green and full of actual Colombian families and university students and old men playing cards, with a fraction of the foreigner hunting energy, or in Envigado or Sabaneta, which feel like their own towns and where a foreigner is a curiosity rather than a target. They pay something closer to a local rate because they're not in the zone that's been priced for tourists. That one move, where you sleep at night, changes the entire texture of your experience, because you stop marinating in the processing zone and start living in a city. They put in the work on Spanish, and I cannot overstate this one. Even clumsy, hard-accented Week 3 Spanish changes everything, because the moment you can have a real conversation, you stop being a walking wallet and start being a person. Predators lose interest fast in a man who can understand what's being said around him, who can catch the tone shift, who can ask a follow-up question. The language is armor. It's also the single biggest determinant of whether you build a real life or stay a tourist forever. And men your age sometimes tell themselves they're too old to learn. You are not. I've watched 70-year-olds get conversational in a year by just refusing to quit. They build daytime lives, the same cafe every morning until the staff know their order and their name, a gym, a swimming group, a chess club, a language exchange, a hiking group that goes up into the hills on Sundays. They volunteer, they take classes. It sounds unglamorous next to the fantasy, and that's exactly the point. The unglamorous version is the one that's real and durable and can't be stolen. What they're doing, whether they'd put it this way or not, is accumulating people who know them for reasons that have nothing to do with money. And a man surrounded by people like that is nearly impossible to run the classic plays on. And here's the thing that surprises the fantasy chasers, the part they never believe until they see it. Those men, the ones with real roots, real Spanish, a real daytime life, are also the ones who sometimes end up in genuine, healthy relationships here. Not because they hunted for it in Parquelleras, because they built a real life, became someone worth knowing, met people through normal channels the way you'd meet anyone anywhere, and it happened the way it happens everywhere on Earth, slowly, unglamorously, to a person who wasn't desperate. The desperation is the tell that gets you hunted. The life is what makes the desperation go away. Solve for the life, and a lot of the rest takes care of itself. Now, if you are going to go out at night, and you might, that's your call, I'm not your father, then at least go out like someone who wants to wake up whole. So here's the harm reduction, plainly. Never accept a drink you didn't watch get made, and never leave a drink unattended, not for 10 seconds, not to go to the bathroom. If your glass leaves your sight, it's done. Order a new one, no exceptions, no matter how rude you feel it looks. This one rule prevents the majority of the worst outcomes. Do not, under any circumstances, bring someone you met that night back to where you're staying, and don't go back to theirs. I know how that sounds to a grown man, and I know the fantasy runs directly against it, but the overwhelming majority of the drugging robberies happen after the target lets the person into a private space, and there is simply no version of the first night that's worth waking up on the bathroom floor. If a connection is real, it survives you being careful. Anyone who pressures you past your caution on night 1 is telling you exactly who they are. Keep the cash in your room minimal, and the daily withdrawal and purchase limits on your cards low. Most banking apps let you set these yourself in about 2 minutes, so that even a genuinely bad night is a survivable, annoying one instead of a life-altering one. Use the ride apps instead of flagging cars on the street. InDrive, Uber, Cabify, Didi, all operate here, and they create a record of where you went and who took you. Never let anyone take you to a second location, a bar you didn't pick, or an ATM. Keep your real valuables, passport, the good watch, the bulk of your cash, in the safe or at home, and go out with a cheap phone, a photocopy of your ID rather than the original, and just enough cash for the night. A word on the app specifically, since that's where a lot of the worst cases start: slow everything down. The play depends on speed and intensity. Someone who is your soulmate by the 3rd message and wants to meet at a place they choose, late, is running a script. And the intensity is the warning, not the reward. Meet in daylight, in a busy public place you picked, the first few times. Tell someone the details. And be quietly suspicious of anyone who's in a hurry to get you alone. Real connection is patient. Only the hustle is in a rush. And tell one person back home where you are, who you're seeing, and check in on a schedule. Because being uninvisible is completely free, and it's one of the best protections you've got. The embarrassment that makes men go dark and tell no one is precisely the vulnerability the whole ecosystem is built to exploit. Refuse the embarrassment. There's nothing shameful about being a man who wants a new chapter. There's only something dangerous about being a man nobody's checking on. None of that is fear-mongering. It's the exact same advice the U.S. Embassy gives its own citizens, just translated into how you'd actually live it day to day. Follow it, and you remove yourself from the target pool almost entirely, because the people running these plays are looking for the easiest mark in the room, and every one of those rules moves you toward being the hardest. Let me pull this together. Medellín is a real place, not the caricature on either side. It isn't the paradise the passport bro channels sell, where a man your age is handed a second youth for the price of a plane ticket. That version has genuinely gotten men robbed, ruined, and in a real number of cases killed. And it isn't the hellscape the fearmongers describe either, because thousands of foreigners live good, ordinary, warm lives here every single day. The difference between those two outcomes is almost never luck. It's whether the man walked in trying to be chosen or walked in trying to build something. The oldest truth I know about this city is this: Medellín gives you back exactly what you bring to it. Bring hunger and self-deception and a fantasy about who you become when you cross the border. And there is an entire economy waiting to feed on that, expertly, and leave you with an empty room safe and a question about whether any of it was real. Bring patience, some clumsy Spanish, a low profile, and a genuine willingness to build a life instead of buy a feeling. And this can be one of the best chapters you ever get. Same city, same streets. The whole thing comes down to which man gets off the plane. If you got something from this, hit subscribe. I'm in a different city every few months, and the next videos take this same honest look at other places men your age are being told to run to. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you on the road.